audience. I have the privilege, Horace, to moderate this particular conversation. And so out of the spread, I said, hey, I want to be able to ask the tough questions. And so I hope you're prepared. You'll try your best. Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, Horace, the floor is yours. Yes, sir, please. Let's give Horace a round of applause.
Hello, everyone. Try to spruce up some afternoon energy. So, Greg, thank you for the introduction, brother. It's always great when you can have the guy moderating your session. So, I appreciate everything. And then also one other thing, too. I have to give you your credit. I have presented in several political spaces and in organization offices and everything else. And as much as we talk about technology, this might be one of the first functional, easy-to-use projectors that I have come across in the civic and political sector. So being able to actually walk to my laptop and press a button and get started is underrated simplicity.
It's a multi-million-dollar facility, too.
Well, I'm just happy the projector works. All right, so I'm going to tell you all about Empowered, but I'm going to, I told Greg I'm going to do something a little different today. So by that what I mean is that Empowered is obviously, or I'm not going to say obviously, some people have not heard of it, and for those of you who have, this might be, some of what you know of already. But Empowered is an application that is geared towards simplifying people's ability to engage their local elected officials effectively. Engage the right ones on the right issues, and do so in a way that's easy and convenient to the extent of the tools that they use for everything else today, right? But what a lot of people ask me a lot is, I'm an ex-tech guy. I'm an ex-tech executive. I used to work at Oracle. I was an executive there. I've been in user experience design for over 10 years. How did I get here? And I wanted to take the time today to actually explain that. And I think that it's not always it's real, but it's not always a conversation I have with every audience. But I think that there'll be an appreciation for it here because, as Greg said, it provides a context. Because that is a key component to effective engagement, is understanding why you should be engaged in the first place. So, to begin, and I'll try to get through this quick, who is Horace Williams, right? So that's not my date of death, by the way. That's just a precursor for the next slide right here. So, who is Horace Williams? Background story. Between 1983 and 2012 is what I'll talk about really quickly. So, born in 1983, I'm a millennial, young, black, African-American. That middle image there, just to kind of go a little out of order, is one of the places I grew up in. I'm a New Yorker originally. That's a picture of Co-op City in the Bronx, if you're familiar with it. Moved here in 2008. Those two lovely people on this side is my mother and father, Horace Williams and Vera Moore. I mentioned them, aside from the fact they were wonderful enough to give birth to me. They were both very active in their communities. It's particularly my father, who was very much a mentor in the political space, ran for office, did a lot in Brooklyn around servicing his community, and was rewarded as such and known as such. And because he did so much and always tried to pull me into it, I said, you know what, I'm never going to be involved in the political space ever when I grow up. So a lot of truth to that. Aggie Pride. I am a graduate of North Carolina A&T University, which also shaped a lot of who I am. Obviously, there's a huge history behind that campus and the people who've come to that school. But aside from that, it taught me the importance of the community within. It was my first kind of engagement with, I guess you could say, local elected leadership with all the stuff I did with the SGA there. And it's just an experience that I'd never forget. It also steered me towards my career, which was where I discovered that I was good at design, application design. And as a result of that, I ended up having a very adventurous career. And by that what I mean is that I have, since college, other than consulting work, applied for an actual full-time job since I've graduated. And by that, what I mean is that I left there and I went into business for myself. And one of my clients at the time, Eugen Media, small 5-people firm in Chinatown, they were on the verge of some new stuff, new technology around social technology engagement, and for businesses to engage people using data, stuff like that. I came on board to lead their design. 2 years later, they were acquired by a company called Vitru here in Atlanta. So that was the first acquisition I was a part of. I was a key personnel in that acquisition. Came to Vitru as a result here in Atlanta in 2008. When I joined Vitru, there was 14 people. When I left Vitru, there was 250 people over 4 years, and we were acquired by Oracle. I then went to go to Oracle, where I was a key employee in the acquisition, one of 10 people out of the 250 people, including the CEO, who had to be retained for 3 years in order for the agreement to go through. My role per acquisition was to oversee user experience design, usability testing for 3 different companies that they had acquired at the same time. So, at that point, I was about 28 or 29. So, you would think I pretty much had a pretty fulfilling career. Like, everything went right, smooth, adventure, had fun, made some good money, living the good life, happy and accomplished. Have a wife, well-fed, got an awesome dog. I'm living, right? Why would I want to change this and go back and start a company and politics, technology, engagement? Who cares? I'm doing fine. So what happened? Why Empowered? This happened. And it's interesting because it's crazy. I made this presentation, and I almost just felt the same emotional impact just right now during that pause as I did the minute it happened. My wife, who was in the back, she can testify to this. When this occurred, now here's the deal, right? I'm from Brooklyn, I'm from the Bronx. Unfortunately, the death of young black men is something that I'm almost desensitized to. It wasn't the death component, if I'm being completely honest. It was, I tell people this all the time, I said, people go to jail for mistakes every day. And there was something about this. I said, the gentleman who's mentioned here got off with nothing. No time, no charges, nothing, just walked away. And something bothered me about that in my soul. And I could not pinpoint it. It took me a while to really think through it. And I started with the why. Why did that happen? Why do I feel like no one was held accountable for this? I look at that kid and I thought about it. You see me, I'm a big guy. But the truth is, I haven't changed much vertically since I was 18 years old, 17 years old, 16 years old. A whole lot horizontally, but not so much vertically. And the thing is that I was probably more physically intimidating at that age than he was. And I look at my young cousins and I see the same thing. So that why in 2013 kind of evolved into a who. Who is responsible for holding people accountable? Making sure justice is served, making sure the right things happen in policy and everything else along those lines. And I'm a data guy as much as I'm a design guy because I worked at Oracle all these years. And I've worked in social technology data and everything else along those lines. So I'm left brain and right brain. So I care about the details, right? So, who? Now, the interesting thing here is that when I dug deep into trying to figure out all the involved parties and all of the actual real decision makers, it brought me to a bunch of local politicians, local elected leaders. Now, I want to be clear here. Not everybody on here, and this is not about, in general, this is not about, me saying, these people are responsible. No, it's not about that at all, because in fact, there are some people up here that played a positive role in this process, But what I saw when I looked at this is I said, wow, there's a lot of people that are involved in whether someone is free or goes to jail, or in some cases, life and death. And we put these people in office. And even though we put these people in office, sometimes on purpose or sometimes through apathy, we're still supposed to hold them accountable. Just a quick run through here for some context, because there's a couple of things I actually wanted to point out on the screen, some of which is cut off. Some things you may not know, right? So, interestingly enough, coroner and medical examiner. So, a medical examiner is not typically an elected official, right? But county coroner is. It's kind of becoming a deprecated elected role, but it still exists in some places that are low on resources, right? Medical examiner determines the cause of death, which then has an impact on the charges that are made. This is an interesting dynamic, and I want to bring this one up specifically because all of the events took place in the city of Sanford in the county of Seminole County of Florida, Seminole County. So why is a Volusia County, if you say it that way, Volusia, whatever it's called, coroner involved? Because Seminole County doesn't have the resources, so they actually rent out medical examination work to Volusia County, right? And those officials are appointed by the elected officials in that county, which are not voted on by the people in Seminole County. So you're having Seminole County decisions made in Volusia County by people you don't elect. So if you want to add an extra layer of complexity to all of this, now you have to keep up with the elected officials in 2 separate counties. You can barely keep up with people on your block. How do we simplify all of this, right? And I can go through all the details of this all day, but if you want to ask me, I know all the stuff like the back of my head. We can talk about it afterwards and have coffee. But the reality is that how do you feel after knowing all of this? It's informational. You see the people that are all interconnected into this process. But still, what do I do? It's 2014. I've gotten over the emotions of it, but now sharing social posts doesn't seem like a good enough way to express this. I still have this issue deeply rooted in me. Something is not right here. I'm a smart guy. I'm generally aware I'm a voter, but I don't feel empowered. Hence where the name comes from. But this thought right here, especially when my wife and I were starting to get engaged and thinking about marriage, this is what kind of aided me more than anything else. It made me think about my father and an inherent comfort I had in living in Brooklyn, when my father was very heavily engaged in the political space, which was, how do I protect my children in a country governed by a process I barely understand, led by people I can't hold accountable? Right? Truth is, you can't. And you're not alone. According to a study done by Allstate, 1% of Americans are really politically involved. Now let's get to the crux of that. What does that mean? So Allstate did a study. They took 10 key areas of political engagement. We're talking about whether it's donation, participating in a campaign, calling an elected official, going to a town hall, sending an email, sharing social content, voting, all of these items, and said 1% of people participate in all these activities. Okay? Now, and 41% very rarely participate in any of them. That's horrible. But I'm going to show you another key stat, and I'm going to make it even connect it more to us. I'm a millennial. 70% of millennials are not politically engaged or active. This is a Harvard poll. And this ain't from 2014 either. This was from 2018. But here is where people get caught up in the hype. What is it? Where is this piece right here? Found out 3/4 are registered to vote. I tell anyone who will listen in, Voting is 10% of the process. It is really easy to mobilize a group. Well, it's not easy. Let me take that back, because there's some people that work very hard to do that. But it is one step in owning your democracy. Because you can just put people in a place, but they're only going to do the work that they're held accountable to do. I always say there's a reason why in the Bible it says fear God, not like him, right? And it's because our ability to operate is under that premise of fear. And it's not from a bad perspective, but when you think about political officials and you think about people who do work, the accountability piece is they should be scared to do wrong against you. That's what keeps them doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it's just a way of managing their execution. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Actually, it's not a bad thing at all. You put them in office, they should be requiring you to put them in office again, right? But why? Why are millennials not involved? Why are they not engaged? The remainder of that study, the remainder of that article then said, the millennials, attuned to peak experiences, sophisticated about social media and flawlessly delivered entertainment, can be very selective about what they choose to even acknowledge. Politics appears to be something they can take or leave. If you read through this, the answer is convenience. I can use my phone to call an Uber if my legs are tired. I can use a phone to order some food if I'm hungry. I can use a phone to look for jobs, talk to friends, book a flight, do everything else, right? So if you create an environment for millennials or young people where everything can be handled with the same type of technological behavioral set, and then say everything except this, you're asking for trouble, you're asking for disengagement. But there's an upside to this. Can you really be effectively engaged using technology? So Pew Research says, and this is another 2018 poll, 80% of blacks say the statement, social media highlights the important issues that might not get a lot of attention otherwise. 54% of blacks and Hispanics especially likely to value social media sites for helping them vocalize their opinions and issues and things that are matters to them. What I read under that is this is not an issue of disengagement as a byproduct of not caring. The disengagement is convenience. They care. We just have to make the care actionable and convenient. And we can try to change the behavioral patterns of young people all we want, but it's not going to work. Too many things working against you. So you have to come where they are. So we come back here. It's 2015. And I look back at this and I say, we have to simplify this. What if I can take all of this and put it in one place that makes it easy for everybody to put in their address and see who represents them? Specifically, who represents them. What if they live in multiple places or have multiple homes or they have friends here, someplace there? Just switch addresses and switch the information. Or you can pull in that news and that information so you can stay up to date on the things that matter relative to your local political landscape. And from there, Empowered was born. So, in 2015, I packed my bag from Oracle, and I left, and with some good friends of mine who were some of my co-executives, gave me a few bucks, and some of my own pot, we went and built our first product that we released in 2016. Our first application, which is available now, well, actually the second version of our app is available now, allow people to essentially engage their local elected officials all the way to the President of the United States. So depending on which location you're in, and we focus on some key cities because there's about 500,000 plus elected officials nationwide, I'd say Empowered has about 20 to 25,000. And we manage all of that data, by the way. So in certain locations like Atlanta, if you put in an address, we'll pull up every elected official that represents you, from your local city council member to your local school board member to your county commissioner to the President of the United States. Then we give you the ability to contact them, identify the jurisdictions you live in, and then we'll even send you content from time to time to help create context for that engagement. But context, it's a big word. See, one of the things that happens is that we can't always wait for adversity to strike to create context for engagement. Okay? Engagement, political engagement, has to be embedded in our daily lives. Advocacy is the fabric that pieces together democracy. It's what keeps it together so that everybody is treated fairly and equal under this nation. So how do we get everybody involved on a daily basis? Well, you have to continue to keep people informed. When people are informed, they can advocate better because they understand, they have the context. So how are we doing that? Well, I'm proud to say next month, which is next week, we are launching version 3 of our application. And what we are going to do is we are going to have a context driving engine that's in it. It's done now. We just haven't put it out yet. And it identifies all of your local elected officials and provides you news and events where they're all participating in a constant feed. We also will allow you to click on those events or those news pieces, like right here. You know, I know we had a little bit of a technology issue earlier this year. Might want to read about the issue from the application. Now, what do we do on social channels typically when we see news? Share it, right? What if we had another action instead of sharing? What if we could contact the source? What if directly from the article, you can call Keisha Lance Bottoms' office? But prior to that, learn about what she's responsible for. Right? But bottom there, you can read full description of a role, address and jurisdiction, next election date, term period, get an understanding of who you're going to engage, who you're going to talk to, and do that directly from the content versus just sharing it on social networks. What we're trying to do is create context that's actionable. In addition to shareable. Shareable is not bad because you still want to create awareness. But what happens is that a lot of people don't get local news. And the problem is that a lot of people don't get local news because local news, especially local good news, is not popular news. Popular news does not go viral. Non-popular news doesn't go viral. It doesn't go viral, doesn't show up in your social media feeds. Then you're not informed. You know what's not viral? Issues that happen in your neighborhood, like redistricting. Things that happen in your neighborhood. Sometimes, in certain cases, depending on how small the communities are, if it's a community that impacts you but not one you live in, you may not hear about a special election. You may not hear about new developments. You may not hear about increased tax costs and things along those lines, things that create context for you to say, hey, before y'all make that decision, I have an idea. I want to be engaged, right? So that's where we're trying to pull you in. And then from that information, make the call. You may send an email. Do it directly from the technology. We create awareness we create awareness that's actionable, where we educate first, then get you engaged. So that's the Empowered Mobile application. We do several other things, but just to kind of give you a little bit of high-level context, it's free, so you can download it. It won't cost you anything. It's available now. The version 2 is now, and then you can get the newer version next week sometime. We'll send out an announcement. 200,000 plus data points. So like I mentioned before, we have about 25,000 elected officials in the system, but for each one of those elected leaders, we have term periods, we have descriptions, we have roles, we have jurisdiction boundaries, the shape files, because as you guys know, jurisdictions cut across zip codes, so you can't just locate elected officials by zip code. You have to actually have a jurisdiction boundary. So for every elected official in our system, we have those shape files that we use to identify what jurisdictions that you reside in, which also, from a data perspective, makes us very safe. And let me explain that. Even though you come into our application and put in your address, after you enter it, we don't need it anymore. We only use the address to pull all of your jurisdictions. All the other information is based on the jurisdictions you reside in. So we don't have to really do anything with your address information, because what's important to everybody is what jurisdictions you reside in. Now, one last thing, Empowered is a business, and it's a business for several reasons. And by that, what I mean is it's a for-profit, it's not a nonprofit. Sustainability. The reality is that I want this to live far beyond me, and I want it to be something that is valued enough by the public to keep it running for the long period of time. The other side of that is that, as we know with government technology and oftentimes nonprofit technology, it's a little more difficult to get the engineering talent and tech talent that you need as nonprofits in some cases. And coming from Oracle, I understand the importance of having the best of the best, especially when it's serving my community. And we can't settle for anything less than that. So how do we do that? We have an advocacy and engagement platform. We work with organizations, soon to work with local governments. Right now also working with people who are running voter adoption campaigns or voter registration campaigns. Great thing about the new application is that because we have the app and we have a platform, you can actually switch the new app into a canvassing tool. And those people can be locked in as volunteers with an organization, and they can go out and leverage the same tool that they use for their own engagement to work with the organizations they're a part of. We also allow organizations to use our platform for the acquisition of new members. One of the things you can do in Empowered is tell us about the things that you care about. We call it causes. And those causes then allow us to connect you with local organizations that care about those same causes. Why would we do that? Because local organizations need a better way to find new members and donations, and people need support for the causes that they want to advocate for. So it's a twofold value proposition. Continued education. Engagement is kind of self-explanatory, but I want to talk about the continued education piece before I cut off. And what that means is that a lot of organizations and campaigns that drive advocacy efforts tend to only be single campaign focused. Here's the problem with that. They end up not really educating their members or making them better citizens or better advocates. What they end up doing is creating a glorified assignment task pool where they say, contact this person and do this. Contact this person and do this. And you follow the instructions and you engage on behalf of an organization, but have you really become a more engaged citizen? Have you really become a better advocate? So what Empower does is that once that campaign is over, we still give them all the context drivers for continued engagement and education through our application, so that you in aggregate as an organization can continue to learn from the people that are members in your organization, while those people continue to be engaged with the other organizations and their own elected officials and grow their influence and education as citizens. And to us, that's extremely important, because advocacy is not a campaign. It's a year-round embed in your life. And it's something that you always need to make sure that you're participating in. And with that said, that's Empowered. I can drink my water now. You do.
Let's give him another round of applause, please, y'all. Come on. Keep the energy high. We're still here. And so you can see why Horace is here. For those, raise your hands if you've heard of Empowered before? Keep your hands raised if you have it on your phone. Okay, awesome. And so let me brag a little bit. Again, the context of the opportunity of having Horace and conversations like these over the course of what we've been discussing is very important when it comes to connection.